Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Quinnton Alexander. Welcome to the Gaming Corner, a special segment of Studio 122. I've been tasked here to do a video game review, and I'm going to do Dark Souls 3. It is a game that is on the Xbox One, PS4, and PC. I'm going to start you off with a little bit of background and lore. Dark Souls 3 takes place in a transitory place revolving around the first flame and the cycle of fire and dark. You play as a protagonist whose goal is to find and return the 5 Lords of Cinder to the thrones at the Firelink Shrine in order to link the flame again. The protagonist is known as an unkindled, a being considered less of being than undead, who was made from the remains of an undead warrior who failed to link the flame as a result burn their bodies into ash. The 5 Lords of Cinder are Ludlith, the Exiled, Aldrich, Saint of the Deep, the Holy King Lothric, the Farron's Undead Legion, the Abyss Walkers, and the Lord of the Profane Capital, Yorm the Giant. What it means to link the flame is that this world is set in a cycle, and when you link the flame, the cycle continues. And if you don't link the flame, then the Age of Dark begins, which just basically means that it's just complete darkness. There's no sunlight, there's no light. Everything's just bleak and darkness. 4 of the 5 lords refuse to link the fire, with only the 5th being Ludlith. He's the only one who's like, yeah, let's link the fire. But the other 4 are just like, nah, I don't want to do that. So your character is basically tasked to go and find these Lords of Cinder and bring them back to the thrones, dead or alive. The Dark Souls universe is set in a world that reminisces the Middle Age in Europe, utilizing weapons like swords, axes, and bows, and also uses magic like pyromancy, sorcery, and faith-based spells that are derived from the sun. Some of the gameplay. Dark Souls 3 is a third-person action RPG that is known for its immense difficulty, punishing players heavily for making simple mistakes. Whereas other games may hold the hands of players along the way, the Souls series is like, nah, fam, we're not doing that. As a human character, the player is tasked with fighting many different enemies, from other humanoid characters that may or may not be corrupted from the stuff around them, to fighting things like giant soul-rotted trees, to ghost-like creatures that only appear when in proximity. The game is set in zones, and in each zone is a bonfire, a place where a player can collect their thoughts, restore their health, restore their Estus flasks, which is a consumable item that players use to refill their health, but they only get a limited amount, and they can level it up with things like Estus shards and undead bone shards. At the end of almost each zone is a boss that the player may or may not need to defeat. Some bosses are optional, some bosses are prominent to the game's progress. Should the player best the boss, they will receive a dedicated amount of souls, the currency of the Souls series, a bonfire, and maybe an item or 2. In Dark Souls 3, the player is assigned a central hub, which is called the Firelink Shrine, which allows the player to level up with the souls that they've accumulated over time, as well as upgrade their weapons and buy items using the souls as a currency. However, these souls are not completely attached to the character. Should the player die, they automatically lose their souls, and they can get their souls again, but they have to go back to the place where they died. So if they're on the way back to the place where they died and they die again, those souls that they got are lost forever. Players can fight with physical weapons like swords, axes, hammers, clubs, spears, etc. They can also use bows and arrows, staves for sorceries, and talismans for chimes and chimes for faith magic. Shields are also a means for defense, for defending it against attacks. However, only as long as the character's stamina will allow it. Stamina is used to measure how many attacks the player can use, how many attacks the players can block, and how many times the player can roll. Should that stamina bar run out, I mean, your defense capabilities are gone and you could get punished easily. A new mechanic from the game is the FP meter, which determines how many uses a player can use spells or weapon arts, which are specific skills that are dedicated to each weapon. If it's the same thing. If you run out of FP, you can only use spells, you can only use your weapon arts. There are ways to regain your FP, which is called an Ashen Estus flask, which uses the same means as a regular Estus flask, but you can only have a certain amount, so you have to manage which ones you want the most. The game runs optimally on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. However, at times the game can suffer in performance, especially in highly populated areas or large boss arenas. Dark Souls 3 also takes after Bloodborne, another creation from Software that has similar gameplay to the Souls series. by increasing the speed and movement of the characters. This does have its drawbacks though. So some of the problems with the game, as mentioned before, the increase in speed of the game has made using heavy weapons like great axes and ultra great swords limited from the previous games, as bosses and regular enemies have now been adapted to fight faster players. The slower players using these large weapons are at a disadvantage from being attacked before their attack can even land. Another problem with the weapon choice, barring DLC, isn't as prominent as it was in previous titles. Faith and intelligence builds, which revolve around magic, aren't as useful as they were in the previous titles like Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, and even Bloodborne, surprisingly. It's the same thing using FP. You are limited in how much magic that you can use, unlike in previous games where each spell had a certain amount of uses, where in this one, you just, however much you have for your FP, that's however much you can use. So if you run out of FP and you don't have any Ashen Estus Flask, well, you can't use any magic. So if you're based around magic, you're gonna have to resort to physical attacks, which is why this game is being focused more solely on physical rather than magic, which is unfortunate for people who like magic. More technical problems include things like frame drops, lack of lengthy DLC, even though there's one coming out in the next couple of days, weird hitboxes that allow enemies to attack players when they aren't in their vicinity, and overall difficulty, which players can get hit once and immediately die. That's happened to me multiple times, and pretty much in the newer series, Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 specifically, not so much in the older ones, Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. I'm not sure exactly what the reason behind this was, why you can just automatically get killed from one hit. I'm assuming it's because they just wanted to amp up the difficulty, but other than that, I can't really find a reason. That's one of the reasons why this game can be frustrating for a lot of players. Just going into a fight, getting hit once, dying, it's really unfortunate, especially when you spend so much time grinding, building up your character, and to know that just a boss can just slap you across the face and just be like, nah, fam, get out of here. Overall, I give this game a 9 out of 10 rating. It's probably one of my favorite games, probably of all time. I actually prefer it over the more popular Dark Souls 1 and over my previous favorite Dark Souls 2, even though Dark Souls 2 isn't as good of a game as people say. I even prefer it over Bloodborne, which people also say is a much better choice, but I still prefer Dark Souls 3. It takes what Dark Souls 1 does best and also incorporates the stuff from Bloodborne as well and brings it all together. The bosses are great. The levels design is great. It's similar to Dark Souls 1's level design, which is not all in one area, but it makes sense as to how the area can go. In general, I think that's about it I can say about this game. I'm looking forward to the DLC that comes out a little bit later this week. So that's about it for the Gaming Corner. See you later.